Ciao, welcome anyone who's listening to this newest episode. In this episode, I won't be reviewing a film, instead I'll be exploring the poetry of Wendy Cope, British poet who is still alive today, originally from Erith, and comparing her work and style to that of the ancient Roman poet Catullus. Catullus lived 84 to 54 BC. He didn't see Rome turn into an empire under Octavian, who became Augustus, the first Roman emperor. But he did live in a troubled time, and he lived in the times right before that happened. If the first year of Augustus's reign is 27 BC and he died in 54 BC, he was alive during the civil wars between Julius Caesar and Pompey, and Caesar appears in some of his poetry, Julius Caesar that is, though that isn't the focus of his poetry. The focus of his poetry is much more intimate and personal. There's one remaining book of his work. Of course, it was written in Latin. Unfortunately, I can't read or write Latin, but I've read translations of his poetry, and I recently re-listened to a fantastic episode of In Our Time on Catullus. I'll leave a link to that so you can hear it. I listened to it on YouTube, and that was the inspiration really to make this video, along with the fact that I was reading Wendy Cope's work. I've got a couple of her collections, and I'm a big fan of her work, and I'll go on to explain why and read some of her poems too, I believe. So, what characterises Catullus's poetry? Catullus is potentially best known, if known at all, for his erotic verse. Some considered it obscene. Some of the translations of those poems are very risque, very physical. He's also credited for playing a major contribution to Western love poetry from not only his time but right up until the modern time in pop songs and things like that. I'm paraphrasing verbatim what some of the points the academics make and the scholars that are on In Our Time. He wrote in a variety of forms. His work was playful, direct, precise, political, but mostly concerned with love and the vicissitudes of love, looking at it from many different angles: idealised, tragic, epic. And I believe Wendy Cope does the same. In my opinion, Wendy Cope is one of the best poets alive today. I think she's definitely one of the most accessible. What characterises her work, again in my opinion, though this is nothing revolutionary to say, is that it is very witty, formal, light-hearted, serious, erotic, coquettish. I love that word. And playful. And the way she writes, the simplicity in which she writes with, can sometimes be seen as a deceptive technique to make the work seem less serious or less profound, when I think she's very consciously doing that. And as I have previously said, a lot of her work explores the relationships between men and women from a woman's point of view, though in her first collection, Making Cocoa for Kingsley Amis, which won loads of awards. She's won many awards. She's highly decorated, a successful poet, whatever that means, in 2021. I think her first book came out in the late 80s, so that gives you a sort of, I think she's an older lady now, I'm not sure how old. And she was originally a teacher, so respect to her for that. I know where she's coming from with regard to that experience. But let's read some of her work. So this is, I'm not sure what collection it's from, but it is called Serious Concerns. It's one of her books that preceded Making Cocoa for Kingsley Amis. I think she's written many. But this should give you a flavour of what her work is like. Okay. So this poem's called Bloody Men. Bloody men are like bloody buses. You wait for about a year, and as soon as one approaches your stop, 2 or 3 others appear. You look at them flashing their indicators, offering you a ride. You're trying to read the destinations. You haven't much time to decide. If you make a mistake, there is no turning back. Jump off and you'll stand there and gaze, while the cars and the taxis and lorries go by, and the minutes, the hours, the days. So that's the opening poem to her book, and it sort of sets the tone. To show you how that tone shifts very quickly, but is in the same ballpark, I'll read you the second poem in the collection called Flowers. Some men never think of it. You did. You'd come along and say you'd nearly brought me flowers, but something had gone wrong. The shop was closed, or you had doubts, the sort that minds like ours dream up incessantly. You thought I might not want your flowers. It made me smile and hug you then. Now I can only smile. But look, the flowers you nearly brought have lasted all this while. Okay, I might have saved that at the end, but I felt like I read that horribly, so I can't go back and change it. But so apologies for that. But this is the sort of thing that Cope writes about, and she writes about them using these big, almost nursery rhymes. They're very loud, sound like gongs. She writes sonnets, quatrains, pantoums, villanelles, in much the same way that Catullus used a variety of different forms, as I was saying earlier: epic, scatological, epigrams, hexameters, a variety of different meters. And Cope, very similarly, writes, uses a plethora of different forms, traditional poetic forms from the Western culture, and modernizes them. Catullus translated some of Sappho's poetry. Sappho was a lesbian writer, or at least she wrote poems that explored women loving women, and she was from Lesbos, and Lesbia is a name for someone that's from that part of Greece. And in Catullus's sequence of love poems, he addresses this person called Lesbia throughout, and you explore their relationship, not in any chronological way, but you see their relationship from a variety of different angles and views. And you do the same in Cope's poetry when she talks about love. Let me find another poet. You know, a poet called Tim Liade, who was my tutor at Bath Spa, a really good poet, professor of poetry there, once said that at poetry readings, when poets try and find their poems, the ones to read next, there's nothing more banal, or something like that. He always used to say it though at every poetry reading I went to, and I've always remembered it, and he's got a point. He definitely has a point. Right, so this one is called Tumps. Okay. And this is a sort of playful attack on male poets, the sort of ego that lies behind anyone, but specifically men that write poetry, and sort of does so in a light-hearted, mocking way. Don't ask him the time of day. He won't know it, for he's the abstracted sort. In fact, he's typically a useless male poet. We'll call him a tump for sure. A tump isn't punctual or smart or efficient. He probably can't drive a car or follow a map, though he's very proficient at finding his way to the bar. He may have great talent, and not just for writing, for drawing or playing the drums. But don't let him loose on accounts. That's inviting disaster. A tump can't do sums. He cannot get organised. Just watch him try it and you'll see a frustrated man. But some tumps, and these are the worst ones, deny it and angrily tell you they can. I used to be close to a tump who would bellow, "You think I can't add 2 and 2?" and get even crosser when, smiling and mellow, I answered, "You're quite right, I do." Women poets are businesslike, able, good drivers, and right on the ball. And some of us still know our 7 times tables. We're not like tumps, not at all. So you have that poem there, very cheeky, I would say, quite funny. Another poem just on the opposite page. Poem composed in Santa Barbara. The poets talk. They talk a lot. They talk of T.S. Eliot. One is anti, one is pro. How hard they think, how much they know. They're happy. A quesadilla sings. We women talk of other things. Okay, so I'll read just one more poem. And this poem is the title of one of her collections. I've seen many of her books in bookshops. Like I say, she's popular, accessible, playful. But one of them is called 2 Cures for Love and Other Poems, and that poem first appears in this book, I believe. I just need to find it. Oh, here we go. It's the very last poem. It's the very last one. Okay. Okay. Maybe I'll read 2 actually. I'll read the one on this page as well. So, 2 cures for love. 1, don't see him. Don't phone or write a letter. 2, the easy way. Get to know him better. Okay, so that's 2 cures for love. And you'll be able to find one of her books called 2 Cures for Love and Other Poems. And then you have this poem here, okay? So, advice to young women. When you're a spinster of 40, you're reduced to considering bids from husbands inclined to be naughty and divorcees obsessed with their kids. So perhaps you should wed in a hurry, but that has its drawbacks as well. The answer? There's no need to worry. Whatever you do, life is hell. So I'll leave it there for that because this video is quite long. And like I say, this is something that this video was something that I was going to write as an essay in much the same style as an essay I had published earlier this year in the summer called Notorious Beds, which compares Tracey Emin's infamous art installation My Bed with a poem by Duffy called Anne Hathaway, which is about the wife of William Shakespeare, and then it's about a bed too. So I might leave a link for that. Of course, this is a different form to be discussing 2 writers. I haven't really explored, and I know I haven't read Catullus's poetry. And there's a lot more, like I say, if I was writing or if... Well, I mean, this video can be as long as I want it to be, I suppose, but I think it's best to cut it shorter, or cut it short rather. But there's been many recent new translations of Catullus. I believe her name's Daisy Dunn. If not, her surname's definitely Dunn. Anne Sexton, I believe, has translated Catullus, or Anne Carson it might be actually. No, I think it's Anne Carson. The book I've got is Simon Smith, who is one of the academics on the In Our Time show. And yeah, Catullus seems to be having a bit of a renaissance. Ezra Pound really liked him, used him as a model for good writing from the past. So yeah, Wendy Cope, I implore everyone to read her, especially if you like, what's her name? Rupi Kaur, the really successful Milk and Honey poet. That Milk and Honey is the name of her first book. If you like her sort of Instagram verse, get onto Wendy Cope. If you like Yes, a Daily Wood, get onto Wendy Cope. If you've got any interest in poetry, the female psyche, you like to laugh, please read Wendy Cope. You will get a lot out of it, I'm sure. Thank you for listening. If you've made it to the end, like, subscribe. I need to start remember saying that at the start of these videos. Comment. Next video will probably be back on to reviewing films. Ghostbusters coming out this Friday. I've no real interest in it, but as you know, I've got that pass, so I'll go see that probably Friday and then review it Saturday. And yeah, if I do another one of these, I'll probably do it on Michael Longley and a sequence of poems from his collection called Gorse Fire, and their adaptations of Homer's Odyssey. So maybe that will be a video that will come out soon. I hope everyone's had a great weekend, and all the best as always. Peace.